My name is Frank Sullivan. I'm going to be your host and guide this afternoon as we take a little bit of a deep dive into the world of platform engineering. This is indeed Edinburgh Castle. It's one of the favorite views that we have from Cloudsoft. And today it is my great pleasure to introduce Alasdair, Adam, and Hasith. Alasdair is one of our principal engineers and CTO advisory. Adam Lowe, a recovering CTO and CIO, formerly of Plusnet and Zivver. And of course, Hasith, Director of Platform Engineering at Cisco in their Outshift division, which is a very cool place to be. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Al, do you want to give us a 30-second intro into who you are and what your claim to fame is?
I have no claims to fame, Frank, but I've been working in this field for several decades now, working with Cloudsoft for a chunk of that time. Really intrigued by seeing how technology is leveling up companies of all sizes, particularly the small guys who can really shake up industries and displace incumbents thanks to cloud technology, cloud platforms. Interesting to see how, as the waterline rises, what we're able to do with nothing but a credit card and assign into a cloud service provider, we can unlock amazing things and deliver products to the masses, which is a really exciting time to be alive. So I've spent a lot of my career writing apps, software developer by training, but I spend a lot more time talking to companies and prospects about technology challenges and business challenges they're facing and how various technical toolkits can be wielded effectively to help alleviate some of those challenges. So that includes Cloudsoft's own tools, products, and services, but also the cloud providers that are out there selling their wares. We help companies wield those tools effectively as well. So really keen to hear what the attendees' platform journeys have been like, and if there are any perils and pitfalls that we should be aware of.
You and me both, brother. Adam, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I've been in tech for 27 years. Unfortunately, that's a younger version of myself in that picture there, Frank. But the last 15 years leading engineering teams and functions at kind of director C-level across numerous kind of large corporates and medium-sized companies. However, in the last 5 years, I've been working predominantly with startups and scale-ups. I managed to make that transition and really focusing on helping them figure out how to bring in the right level of process and governance to grow and mature whilst retaining their kind of pace and agility benefit many of these young tech companies have, and with a strong emphasis on DevOps and InfoSec.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adam. And Hasith?
Yeah, similar. I've been in tech for more than 15 years and with Cisco for about 15 years. And in platform domain, at least since 2013, and have done many platforms on-prem, cloud. And I used to run most of WebEx platform automation layer for a few years. And then at the moment, I'm responsible for everything platform at Cisco's accelerator, which is called Outshift.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon as we kind of wade our way through, deep dive, rising waterline. You can kind of get the sense of where we're going with this. So, ladies and gentlemen, now you've had a chance to get to know us and why we're here. We'd like the chance to get to know you a little bit. In the chat box, would you mind telling us where you're dialed in from today, what city, and if platform is a familiarity to you, just so that we can get a quick sense. I'll give us 60 seconds. You should all be able to access the chat box just below. We've had some panelists, or we've had some attendees join from Sao Paulo, Hong Kong, Thailand. Mark, wow, a warm 29.5 degrees. That's terrible for the rest of us, man. Good on you. Brighton, very good. Welcome, Alex. Huddersfield, Telford, okay, a little bit closer to home. And I appreciate not everyone will be feeling as talkative, but let me set the expectation that this is interactive. The very best facilitated learning and peer-to-peer advice comes from this back and forth that we can share, whether you're junior, senior, new to platform, or getting into it, wherever you are in that technical or career journey. The very best insights are often the ones shared. So this is a respectful platform. Controversy is welcome, disrespect is not. So I would encourage you, I'm going to pick up the questions as we go along in the chat box. I'm not sophisticated enough to use the Q&A box and the chat box at the same time. So pop your questions in the chat box as we go along, and we'll be able to communicate. So first of all, let's start off with some definitions. And I'd like to shout out here to Ben Steele and Armakuni, though I'm going to steal from Steele here. Some of the best definitions come from the CNCF white paper around defining the key attributes of platform, where you've got this this idea that platform is treated as a product. Its onboarding is frictionless, it's self-service, it reduces the cognitive load. But something that the four of us on the panel have discussed is it easier to use a platform than not? I think that is one of the key attributes that we need to dig into. So really, as I introduce this topic, I also want to come at this from the team's topology angle, this idea of the thinnest viable platform that we'll get into, and really thinking about where are you in this messy middle squeezed between infrastructure and platform capabilities, product and application teams, or multiple DevOps teams aligned to a set of standardized interfaces and capabilities on platform. Where are you in the journey? So I'm going to give us 2 minutes now just to answer a little quiz, if you don't mind. So on your screen, you should see 2 questions. At least I hope this is working. What's your current situation? So don't really know what platforms are and came to learn, or everything's up and running and you're looking for best practice and some very specific guidance. And then where are you around what your platform does? Is it managed Kubernetes? Is it more on the data side? Is it application storage? Is it something really, really hardcore for analytics and ML capabilities? I'll leave this open for a minute or so, just so we can get an idea. We're about halfway through our participants list here. Alasdair, on the panelist side, can you see the answers as they come in?
Yep.
That's great.
Dancing bar graphs, it's great.
So that really is quite an interesting mix. Obviously, we need to cater to 16%. I don't really know what platforms are. That either indicates that you really are at the beginning of your journey, or you are so advanced and so senior in your technical journey that you're getting into the philosophy of, I don't know what platforms are after 20 years in this industry. That's very possible. And then what does and will your platform provide? I think, maybe one person is on transactional application data storage, a lot around dev environments and application landing zones. Okay, that gives us a great bit of insight at the levels at which we need to touch on here. Panelists, ready to go?
Why not?
Okay, so look, let's start out here with the growing role of platform engineering. These are 3 prompts, and I'm going to ask some questions and kind of guide us through. Alasdair, let's start with you. You mentioned the rising waterline of abstraction. What does that really mean?
So I think it means a couple of things. I think it means services and products being offered by other people are becoming increasingly sophisticated and complex. We have to use more and more tech, a deeper and deeper stack of technology to bring products to market. But it also means that because of specialization, firms and service providers are providing that for us. So there's a bunch of stuff we can offload onto someone else. And, the definition of platform evolves, right? 10 years ago, we would be talking about hypervisors as a platform, and we would be talking about VMware and Xen. Now we're talking about fully formed application stacks, backend as a service, or analytics as a service, or AI ML. These are really sophisticated, fully formed, very capable offerings that we can build on top of, like a platform. And it's only going to accelerate. That waterline is going up and up and up. Sophistication's increasing, and we're handing off more and more and more of our technology stack to other people.
But the, a rising tide carries all ships, n'est-ce pas? Adam, is increasing the level of abstraction a good thing or a really difficult thing?
I'd say it's a balance, right? I mean, inevitably, when you tend to centralize responsibility or a set of infrastructure products or units that people consume, there's a degree of standardization. And quite often that can lose the agility and flexibility in those components that many different customer teams need. Again, I think it's a balance. You've got to provide developers with sufficient flexibility, sufficient granularity of service, sufficient kind of access to tune, configure, that they can be agile and dynamic with what they create whilst maintaining that level of standardization. So I think it's a balancing act.
That's interesting. That seems to be some of the things coming through on chat here around the expectations of completeness, that iteration on features have to be fully formed and production ready in order to be considered usable. Okay, this is off to an interesting start. Hasith, how are you in your role? You're looking at platform engineering. How would you see this waterline between what platform is and what it has to provide out to developers or users, let's say consumers of the platform?
I mean, the main thing is you're dealing with a lot of complexity in the modern infrastructure, and a platform play has to provide a significant benefit over sort of shortest way of doing something on your own. And especially in an organization, if you're doing it 2 times, 3 times, 10 times, 20 times over, a platform play is going to help you do it much better, because any individual action is only going to be good enough to get my core purpose done. So therefore, it's going to, over time, not be reliable and have issues, right?
Sure. Just a point of order for our attendees today. When you're using the chat box, you'll notice there's a little blue button that says send a message to everyone or send a message to hosts and panelists. I think unless it's a private message, send it to everyone into the group thread, or else other people can't see your insights. James, you had a really interesting point. You said abstraction is a double-edged sword. Adam, what do you think he means by that?
Let me just read that comment again, actually. You've got it to hand, Frank. So I think you provided some more context, didn't you?
Disappeared completely. Sorry, James.
Fantastic.
All right. I'll come back to that question when James is ready.
I can probably cover that. I mean,
yeah, sure.
So if you think about it, abstraction, it's almost like developers using things without fully understanding what it is, which could be like fairly dangerous sometimes. But then how much time can you put in to understand every nitty-gritty of complex systems you have? So that's kind of like the balance and sweet spot to kind of hit. And then we often have, I don't know if you guys have stories around misusing platforms, right? So there's a lot of examples in that area, right? So like that, as an example, simple one would be, cloud resources are infinite, or you can log infinitely. You could, or not understanding how a streaming architecture is meant to be used, and therefore you have this all sorts of weird and wonderful uses of Kafka, as an example, right?
Before I come on to point number 2, I'm going to jump ahead to point number 3 because it's salient. Can we can we agree as a panel largely on what is driving the need for platform? 30 seconds each. What is driving the need for platform? Is it a coping mechanism? Is it a standardization? Is it a response to regulatory pressure? Is it something that's always been demanded by developers? Alasdair, what's driving the need for platform? 30 seconds.
Complexity, I mentioned before, and I think that's led to specialization. I think people are deep specialists in a given area. Node.js, Python, web app development, or databases, or message brokers, or OSs. I think the days of having polyglots who are experts in everything is long gone. So we have to rely on other people's subject matter expertise, and increasingly that's being packaged up as some kind of platform offering.
Thanks. Adam?
Yeah, I think inevitably there is a need for it, but I think we had this the pre-conversation we had. I think for me, I see a bit of a conflict coming from more of my corporate kind of environments where there's generally a desire to centralize a lot of things, and there's some costs associated with centralization. And more in the startup and scale-up space, what you definitely see is developers want a much greater degree of intimacy with the services that typically would sit in that infrastructure platform layer. Now, you can argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I definitely think it's a good thing, but you need to help educate them and give them the training so that they can be more effective. So I think conceptually it works, but again, I'm a little bit cautious as to that we don't drive the wrong behaviors. And I'll make a couple more points, Frank, and I'll hand off. But I think if you look at any of the definitions of platform, they make an emphasis around a couple of points. If you lose fidelity on those 2 points, I think categorically it will go wrong. Treat developers not as consumers or victims, but customers. And I think conceptually for technology and engineering teams to think about users as customers, that fundamental mindset shift will drive a lot of if you don't make that journey, will drive a lot of negative behaviors. And the second one is product mindset. And if you don't truly think about it as a product that has to be successful in the market, therefore your consumers, your customers are effectively the definitive people that are going to say whether it's successful or not. I think those two key concepts can't be lost. Sorry, it was a bit of a ramble. Thanks, Frank.
See the eyebrows go up, Hasith, what's driving the need for platform from your perspective?
Yeah, it's really the complexity and the need to do something really well. So you have a kind of a platform advantage. As a single developer or a group doing it, when you do it from a platform play, it has a significant advantage. Now, however, one thing I'd say is it's very difficult to get developers and application teams to like or be on board with platform kind of projects or alignment there. Like it's a very not an easy thing, because it's by nature it's like a bottleneck, and it's a very very fine balance to do. And in fact, a general statement by analysts is there'll be 80% of the organizations are going to attempt a platform play, but it's expected that 70% are not going to be either successful or be able to accomplish the goals they set out to do. So which is kind of an interesting remark about how hard this really is, because it's not just the tech, it's people, processes, technology. Yeah.
Well, I've heard it said that, people, process, technology is not an equilateral triangle. It's an isosceles triangle, and people is the longest part of that triangle. So look, whilst we're flying the plane, I think, we're just going to have to do this right now. You happy now, Adam?
Thank you. Much better, much better.
It is much better, and this is really important. Developers aren't consumers through an API. They're not victims of the world turning against them. They are customers with a unique set of needs and constraints.
But I think, Frank, sorry, I was going to say, one of the quotes you shared while we were talking about putting this webinar together, and I forget whose quote it was, But they said the objective of a platform is to accelerate and simplify. So relieve some cognitive load and simplify, and also just help folk get their jobs done faster, get features to market. I think any product or service that does that will gain adoption, right? There's a lot of interesting chat in the chat window about the dangers of a one-size-fits-all approach. But I think anything that can take some steps towards accelerating and then simplifying life for our beloved specialists in the organization will be adopted, or do folk disagree?
I will allow people to disagree happily, but in the chat box. It brings us neatly onto the key challenges to overcome, right? There is this perception that standardization is equal to one size fits all, when it's probably not. I think there are many flavors of customization that you can get from a standardized platform. You can have a centralized platform that is accessed in a federated manner. You can have various packaging of offerings and services. You know, platform doesn't just mean managed Kubernetes. It could be the bundling of components together for different DevOps teams or different applications teams. So, you know, let's kind of dig into this. Hasith, how do you specifically, how do you anticipate the needs of your platform users?
You have to ask them. I mean, main thing is it's no point like you definitely need to get the customer feedback, but then it's not necessarily about building them what they ask. Always critically think about it and kind of implement it. So I always say, you know, just don't take whether it's customers, whether it's cloud vendors, whether it's anybody, you know, trying to sell you something, like don't just take their word for it. Critically, you know, always apply your critical thinking and think about, you know, how is this gonna work out, and build it. But it's important to listen and ask. Also, on the other extreme, don't be stubborn around, okay, this is how it's gonna be, and it's gonna you must fit, you're doing something wrong. It's always, you know, when you hear frustrations, there's something to gain from it. So always apply empathy, think from treat them like customers, and try to understand why they are complaining. Or
Adam, can I get you to, as long as it doesn't trigger too much trauma, can I take you back to Plusnet and BT? As CIO, this will have fallen deeply under your strategic remit. How did you and the teams that you were instructing, how did they go about anticipating the needs of platform users? And as those needs evolved or change, how did you do that for such a large organization?
It's probably not the answer you want to hear, actually, but I'm probably going to go back to my BT days. I mean, BT 13, 14 years ago had the concept of a platform and components that application teams could consume. However, it was very much this is what we think you want, and they anticipated what they felt the business wanted, and invariably they got it wrong. Were frustrated when they got challenge and friction from the app teams to say, well, this isn't quite fitting for us. We're going to go build our own VC platform. So I think the reality, again, I come back to the treating those users as customers. I think this is such a paradigm shift, because most engineering organizations are reactive organizations in their very DNA. But when you start to truly think about customer, you're not anticipating, you're asking, you're collaborating, you're directly involved with what those teams, what are their goals, what are they trying to achieve? And if you're on the journey with them, I think that's the only way you're going to get that level of intimacy to really understand. Buzzword bingo alert, paradigm shift. Is that me? More than likely. It's the only way you're going to really anticipate the needs is to learn from the users themselves, customers.
Customers, users, consumers, victims. I wanted to call out something from Andrew. You're spot on. This is a clumsy use of language. I apologize. It's not just about anticipating, it's asking the users, what do they need from the platform? Really, the purpose of asking question 1 was to get into question 2. If we build it, will they come? Alasdair.
Maybe. I think we've seen couple of different ways to drive platform adoption. One is top down by edict, which results in a lot of friction and a lot of, some executive thought this was a good idea and we all have to get on board, otherwise bad things, TM, will happen. But there's another way to drive platform adoption, and that is bottom up, by organically creating something that people will use and enjoy using and that will make their lives better. And then the word will spread and more application teams will get on board. Now, if you're the size of big tier one bank with 6,000 apps running that you've grown through mergers and acquisitions over 30 years and you're under the BDI of the regulator, your life's probably different. If you're the CIO or the CTO in that organization, edicts have their place. But for the SMBs and the startups of the world, hopefully we can be more organic and more touchy-feely in the way we do our tech.
You know, I think it's kind of it's a non-obvious question. Whose responsibility is it? If you're big, you're going to have a platform engineering team. It's their responsibility. But that begs the broader question of this sort of mindset shift to be more, you know, product-centric or more more lean startup in your approach, or more agile towards this sort of product design or product-centric mindset. That's really important, and it doesn't always come easily to smart people in big companies who are under a lot of pressure. And I guess the question is, if that product-centric mindset isn't there, whose responsibility is it to lead both the cultural change and the platform evolution? Hasith, do you want to take that one, or take a minute to synthesize?
No, I mean, I can give an example about how I, kind of started it at WebEx. Now, we had a experimental side project that was kind of happening, and it took probably good part of 9 months. Not very well funded. But then when COVID happened, it wasn't a direct ask, but the ask actually was to move infrastructure from private cloud into public cloud to free up space, just because of the volume of scale we were doing. And we first took Kubernetes into production March 2020. New kernel, completely new workflow, a lot of changes. We had like very difficult, hard to debug packet loss and performance problems that had to be figured out. So we did that, and while there wasn't a kind of a tech ask, we changed the entire stack. Like a major migration was pulled off. That would have typically taken 18 months, was done in about 7 weeks. And we had about over 50 clusters and a lot of other problems. And this was within a team of 10 people or less, working, and not necessarily with a lot of other things going on. But yeah, so that's our initial kind of boost into a major transformation effort that kind of happened bottoms up. And then of course, then step by step traction built up, and then it's a major transformation now since then.
So let's run with that for a minute. First of all, congratulations, your team are absolute heroes to do that much work in such a short period of time. You're an inspiration to us all. Let me take you back to things that are utterly unknowable. A little worldwide event called the pandemic pushed us all into our kitchen, dining room tables. Let me ask now, WebEx, there's a masterclass in platform resilience and availability for an unknowable black swan event. How did you respond? How did you respond to that? And you've got, I guess if I had the director of platform from Zoom, he'd probably give me a similar answer, but I've got my preferred Hasith here. So how did you respond to that?
So, I mean, yeah, so a lot of things happened. So as an example, WebEx was the largest conference provider for most of the, enterprises around the world. and we grew 5x within a very short period of time. And that meant this was like insane challenges. And in the middle of that, we did a major platform transformation. And in fact, one thing my boss at the time told us, like, he knew me really well. So he was like, Hasith, don't try anything new. What's important is, it's table stake and, getting the scale up. So then I took the gist of it as, yes, don't want to drop the ball in terms of anything that the business required, but then also certainly in the face of uncertainty, you really wanted that agility. And one thing that was like remarkable of, like, we were doing changes to thousands of infrastructure, like very rapidly, not something using the modern cloud native tech. So one example is for this one media backend, we got the network sizes completely wrong in US East. And on a Friday evening, we tear down everything in US East, VPC, everything, all the infrastructure gone, reservations put in place, and brought, resized everything, brought everything back on Saturday, validated on Sunday, and it was there without a blip, on Monday. And that level of risk and decision that happened at my level, like nobody, like, it's kind of it doesn't, it's not usual right now, but it's kind of, type of things that happen during pandemic, which is like, obviously, both the consequences as well as empowerment, right? So
yeah, I think, Al made an interesting point. He's saying that, the responsibilities really come into focus during an incident. But, this part 2, key challenges to overcome, I think we can kind of frame it. There's what can be anticipated, for example, an increase in customer demand, which will feed into an increased demand on platform. You've got the top-down versus bottom-up approach, and then we've identified like sort of push and pull scenarios. And then there's kind of the Z-axis on the Cartesian plane here, which is knowable to unknowable. The knowable thing is, it's Black Friday, we're going to have a big spike. Or the unknowable is a global pandemic, war, some type of regulatory event that was unforeseeable. So I think you've made a very good point, Hasith, about the agility or the responsiveness of the platform team to be able to move quickly, to be able to pivot, or to be able to dial up, dial down according to changes in the landscape. And I don't just mean the external landscape, I mean the internal landscape as well. So look, I'm gonna park it there. We're more or less at the halfway point. Can I ask my wonderful attendees, just give me a quick yes or no. Give us some feedback now. Are we hitting the right notes for you? In the chat box, just say yes or no. If we are, great, we'll continue. If we're not, we'll speed it up or slow it down accordingly.
Stop the count.
Very good. All right. We'll keep going in this vein. Are there any concluding remarks here? I think the challenges to overcome from my perspective, I would say, are cultural resistance to change. And that would be a common thread that runs through a lot of technology and strategy decisions. But let me give you each 60 seconds to conclude. What do you see as the biggest challenge or the biggest group of challenges now to overcome in platform? Hasith, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, main thing is people don't like change, and that's very natural. Like most of us don't like change. However, it's all about how you respond and manage during change and transition. So whether it's, there's no such thing necessarily good or bad. You have to look at on everything that happens, whether it's an incident, whether it's some major change, look at how you can kind of positively apply that towards your kind of goal you're trying to accomplish. And if you think like that, you'll find ways, basically.
Thank you. Adam, key challenges to overcome. How do you see them from both your startup practice and your corporate practice and experience?
Yeah, I'd probably dismiss the first one, which is if your customers aren't your biggest advocates, I'd suggest you've probably got the product wrong. But if you get the product right, that should be a relatively straightforward challenge to overcome. I think the biggest challenges really are in evolution of the engineering function itself, in terms of fundamentally changing that mindset again towards being customer orientated rather than more reactive. And also mechanically finding, so one of the comments was, we realize we need to do more marketing. We're a product function. We need to market what we do, but that's not typically a function that a lot of people would recognize in engineering, but requires resources and investment from engineering to actually achieve that goal. And then lastly, I think, support from central departments, right? I think a very quick story, 15 years ago, BT, great, we're going to have this platform. Products, a British telecoms company. We're going to have all these standardized products. You can go and you can self-serve and you can consume what you like. The fundamental challenge was the entire data center organization was built on a annual capex budget, which guess what? Went south every year, 15-20%. Now, inevitably, the businesses were consuming more and more technology and they wanted more, and they could articulate the value of that investment against the benefit the business was driving. We couldn't. So I think, again, recognizing that finance also need to adopt and because I do think in a platform type model, you need to move the cost responsibility onto the apps teams and the business and not on the centralized platform team. That was a bit longer than 30 seconds, 60 seconds.
All right,
Frank.
so what's the opposite of devil's advocate here? Angel's advocate. Let me say that for average engineer, I just don't want that level of responsibility and accountability. I don't want to talk to customers. I don't want to, inherit the earth and all of these million tickets that come with it. I'm just not ready for that level of ownership or that mindset. I came here to do my code, do my job, go home at 5:30. I don't want to be a part of this newfound, let's obsess over the customer. It's just too much. What's their place in the universe? Yeah, Adam, go on, 30 seconds to that.
Developers are human beings as well, right?
Yeah.
They have a desire for recognition. And I think one of the things that, I used to be very passionate about technology in isolation of anything else. What makes me passionate about technology now is seeing the impact it has on people. And I think when developers start to understand, how's my technology being used? Why is that important? Why is it relevant? I think, they get more purpose from what it is they're doing beyond the technology. And I think they'll get a lot more recognition and reward from seeing success in those app teams as a result of the inputs that they've provided. So I think it can be a very fortuitous circle. I think of another buzzword.
Yep. Vicious cycle or virtuitous circle. I think that's very good. Alasdair, do you want to close us down here? Give us your summary. What?
Oh man, how can I add to what these two have already said? Great inputs. I'll echo it. Customer obsession, meet the needs, accelerate and simplify, but also make it clear what you're providing and what you're not as a platform provider. So AWS has its shared responsibility model. They very clearly delineate what is their responsibility and what is yours as the app developer building on top of the platform. And I think where we end up with war rooms with 15, 20, 30 participants all dialing into an incident or an incident post-mortem, it's because those responsibility boundaries have become blurred. So make sure you're building the right stuff, make sure people know what you're building for them, recognize, as Adam says, it's a means to an end, not an end in itself, and communicate clearly what people's responsibilities are and give them the freedom to go and do good stuff within those guardrails, within those confines. And I think you'll be off to a good start.
Very salient advice. Thank you, guys. It might be worth noting now, if you're watching this as a replay, go back to our January on-demand video, which was demonstrating the value of SRE. I think there's a joining of minds here between how SRE works as a function, not just for this swarming incident response, but how they can align development, DevOps, platform ops, platform engineering around this, unified desire to be obsessed with the customer or to really think about the needs of the customer. I think if you've got that mindset and you've got those lines of communication into your SRE function, your DevOps function, and your platform operations function, I think that's a great recipe for success. Thank you, gentlemen. So I'm going to move us on now to part 3. Not just a developer experience, but an outstanding developer experience. Hasith, why does this matter? I'd like to ask you from two of your professional perspectives, from Cisco, that is a large business, and then more specifically within your role in the incubation and innovation arm at Outshift. Why does a developer experience matter, and how does that tie into the decisions we make around platform?
So, I mean, main thing is like you really want your developers to be effective and enjoying their work. So if you actually survey or ask people, more often than not, people get frustrated with their tooling. And then in fact, when people are frustrated, they'll figure out weird and wonderful ways to get over certain things, right? Now, it matters because I think, if you're measuring one thing, people tend to measure developer happiness about how effective they can be. And then on the kind of, it's all about enabling things in a more sustainable and a controlled way. That is, that both drives accountability as well, right? Like, you're not gonna, just because developers are used to editing the databases directly on a VM, you're not, if you give that access in production environments type of things, that's not really a good recipe. Yeah, you're getting out of the way, but it's not the kind of way to solve it, right? So the whole point is, create tools and methods around how do you facilitate that in a accountable way that is kind of frictionless, right? We have a concept at WebEx. We have if you're on call, you can access your namespace. You could do things with the debug kind of a console. It's all provided the tooling, but then these things are audited, they're cleaned up. If somebody yeah, so it's like you need kind of processes and improvements around it, right?
All right. Alasdair, let me ask, how can you go too far to the convenience end of the spectrum, or swing the pendulum the other way to
of course,
really repressive control measures? Help us understand this and unpack this.
I'm not sure what I can add that the participants won't already know, but yes, you can make things extremely easy to use. Google App Engine made it super easy to spin up your Java apps, except they weren't really your Java apps because there were all these restrictions that came with using Google App Engine, right? So it was a PaaS, it was a platform, but it wasn't general purpose enough. Great for greenfield, not great for legacy. So, and all platforms bring some opinions, right, that will work for some contexts and not for others. People who are very used to, I liked Hasith's example there about, people who are very used to having really intimate access to production servers, production software processes. Yeah, it's great to have that control, but it's also really dangerous and should be unnecessary. And if we show people what good looks like, a better way of doing things, then we can move away from hopefully those dangerous production practices towards something better. People aren't stupid, but sometimes we need to show them what good can look like. I may be straight off topic there, Frank.
A little bit.
Got a bit ahead of myself.
But let me pull it back here. Moving too far in one direction or the other upsets the balance. And there are always degrees of customization or tailoring access or bundling particular services that comprise this platform that you can access. access as a service. That doesn't need to be a static or a binary thing. It's not
Sure.
everything,
Okay.
nothing, or most convenient or least convenient. It is about finding that balance. But let me.
But it is a balance, Frank. And I think, the whole point of the platform is, again, we're delegating stuff we don't care about to another team, the platform ops team. So we can focus on the stuff we do care about. But that line that delineates the stuff we care about from the stuff we don't will be slightly different for everyone. So the platform designer or the platform builder has to strike a balance, and perhaps in certain circumstances be prepared to move that line to afford more control in certain situations and afford more out of the box convenience in certain other situations. And there will not be a right answer.
Sure. In some circumstances, shared responsibility model is just code for dissolution of responsibility, or even worse, chuck it over the fence. I give the example of the $20,000 ticket that bounced around for 3 months, 9 teams, and never got answered, and the level of waste that comes with that. I want to dial into Andrew Burke's questions here, where it seems like politicking and business as usual is getting in the way of him bringing an innovation or bringing an important change to his big organization. Andrew, let's zoom in on you for a minute. Adam, you've been having the pseudo private conversation. Do you want to elevate Andrew's problem statement here so that we can answer it?
I would probably oversimplify it, but let me give Andrew some time if he wants to add some detailed builds. But I think generally he's highlighting the challenge of cultural change. It's not a technology change, it's not a process change, it's a cultural change, and getting people across the organization to adapt. And expecting probably, I imagine in his organization there's a business case somewhere that said, all right, we're going to go to platform engineering. It's going to save us 10%, or it's going to improve agility by Y. It's going to take 3 months. And inevitably, he's getting then some pressure because in reality, it's a people change, culture change initiative, which, if you're measuring it in months, start again. It takes a long time to realize that sort of change. But to his credit, he seems to be making a lot of progress. I think one of the great ideas around kind of implementing communities of interest to try and galvanize people that are kind of supporters and help kind of grow that community was quite an interesting approach.
Gosh, the rabble rousers, what to do with rabble rousers. I really like Simon M's comment here. Computers only do what you tell them. People have ideas.
That's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
The art of influencing is not even telling people this is the solution, right? You need to really understand what they are after, what they're kind of like, really trying to accomplish. And then really, if what you want to do is their idea, perfect. You don't have to drive anything there. So it's almost like, it's really understanding, the dynamics and, reading the landscape. And if you could kind of figure out how to navigate it, that's the best way to get people on board with any types of transformation, change type of thing.
All right, we're coming up to time here. 30 seconds each. What creates an outstanding developer experience? What's the one piece of advice you could give our attendees that would help create an outstanding developer experience? Adam, I'm going to pick on you first.
I'm going to answer the other question first. Sorry, Frank. Just as a reflection, more in the startup scale-up space, right, which is competition for developers up until the last 12, 18 months has been remarkably aggressive. And this has been, developer experience has been, in my experience, one of the fundamental factors towards gaining the best talent and retaining the best talent. And again, for a lot of young technology companies, that's the biggest challenge. So it's important in that context. But one of the biggest benefits for me has been productivity. The number of times, I won't mention the organization, where I was having a chat with a dev, or you're not usually available. What's going on? Oh, I'm just waiting for a pipeline. It usually takes a couple of hours. Yeah. What do you mean it takes a couple of hours? Have you mentioned this? Oh, no, it's always been that way. you know, and you throw an SRE or a DevOps at the team for a couple of months, and all of a sudden they go, oh my God, we didn't realize the level of waste that exists. So I think, yeah, so that was my answer to the previous question. Yes, there you go, Frank. I'm going to pause there, otherwise I'll overrun.
Hasith, number one piece of advice for building a great, outstanding developer experience. You've talked competently about why we need it. What's the one takeaway that you'd give to our audience?
It mainly listen and kind of like don't assume, listen, understand, and then be very proactive with feedback. Even if they like are frustrated and saying things, just try to understand, with empathy, right? Then you learn something from that.
Sure. And Alasdair, two things I'm going to call upon you. Two things, so I'm going to give you 60 seconds. What is the role of a developer platform, an IDP? And what would be your number one piece of advice or takeaway for the audience today?
Oh, wow. So the IDP is there to, again, it's right there, number 3, make it easier for developers to do their job. Think about less stuff. Rapidly provision fully formed things, environments with pipelines, with maybe a key vault, with Git repositories and access control, all bound up in a nice, easy to consume package that allows them to request it and get it quickly, which allows them to then focus on what they're being paid for, building apps that live in that environment, that are consuming those pipelines to get into production quicker with less cognitive load. So that's I guess ties in with the question at the start of this session. You know, if you're doing platforms, what kind of platform, what's being delivered, and is it development environments? As for the single piece of advice, I can't really do better than what Hasith said. You know, understand your customers. Treat it like a product. You know, Adam's exactly right. Treat it like a product and recognize you're in a competitive space with other products, one of which is teams just continuing to do it themselves, which is generally a bad outcome for organizations with lots and lots of teams. It's very inefficient for every team to just organically discover the best way of running every part of the stack. So yeah, if we're going to strive to provide a platform to help our internal customers do their jobs in a more focused way, we have to understand their needs, and we can't assume that we understand their needs because they will be different from ours.
I think you've touched upon something really, really important. We could do a whole other online event about this, but it's very simple around talent acquisition and churn. If you don't have a great developer experience, you will not attract. These people talk. You will not attract. No one's going to come in and say, gosh, I'm really looking forward to inheriting this steaming bag of effluent. If you've got world-class tools and you've got really tight alignment around the PMO, why they're there, and you're giving them, you know, that right balance, I think it's a recipe for success. So, open forum.